You were talking about just the different places and the different things that we make judgments on. Just to give you an example, and I might have shared this somewhere before, but just seeing, just the different ideas of what we judge and how it
That was just a
affects.
black screen.
Yeah,
By the way, that
yeah.
was just a black screen.
And you right now you're judging my technical
Judging your
ability.
sharing.
You're
Yep,
judging my technical
very much so.
ability based off of the fact that there was a black screen. But just you know, when we make those judgments, right, it's something that we will decide who people are just based off of those superficial, the demographics or the way that they're, you know, um, living or anything else like that. And so it's something to think about. And um, so it should be working now. Let me see. But just want to, you know, think about how. Nope. All right. So just with the idea of, I mean, there's a graphic I'm going to eventually show you guys, but it's there's so many different places where we can make a decision on who somebody is without really knowing them and getting into, their values and what they care about and what's really important, right? And it's I mean, it can be age, right? It can be I mean, just think if you hear somebody who I was just watching a movie the other day where they were talking about, oh, F1, if you've seen F1, right? They're talking about, yeah, this driver, he's had two failed marriages and two divorces and had a string of girlfriends, and so we're making a judgment on this person's professional abilities based off of their personal issues, right? And so, I mean, if we're making judgments on marriages being bad, it actually affecting if we have a bad marriage, if you've been divorced, we've both been divorced, and maybe there's a lot of things that are, you know, um, part of the reasons why we got divorced, right? And that have nothing to do with our character. And sometimes they have everything to do with our character because we finally, did what we really should have done in the first place, right? Or shouldn't have done in the first place. And so it's just something to think about, where people will just make that quick decision and, oh, well, you can't be part of us. You can't be accepted based off of these things that I feel is, disqualifying. And they're all surface level stuff that really does not matter in the long run. Or if it does matter, how do we dig deep to actually understand the reasons behind it, right? Which a lot of people aren't going to do.
Yeah. But it's tough, because we want to be right. We want to feel like we're smart people who are discerning and, can read a room and understand ourselves and other people. I think a lot of this comes down to even your level of emotional intelligence, right? How well do you know yourself, and how do you manage some of those reactions that you have, like knowing your triggers and knowing how you respond to certain stimulus and paying attention to how that affects other people and affects your decision making. And um, I'll give you an example, an example of this. I have to eat food before I go to Costco. I
Yeah.
cannot go into Costco if I am not like full, because if I am satisfied but snacky, I will load up on a bunch of crap that I don't need. And um, I know this about myself, right? Or if I'm hungry, I'm gonna buy like full meals. Like, so I didn't follow my own advice the other day. I bought a freaking lasagna, and there's just two of us in my house. Like, what the hell am I gonna do with the whole
Yeah.
lasagna?
Yeah.
So, like these are things, and I know that's like maybe a silly example, but
No.
um, if I feel like, retail therapy is real for me. I make a lot of unneeded indulgent purchases when I'm bored, when I'm frustrated. It again, that dopamine hit, it add to cart is like smoking a fake
Mhm.
cigarette. I'm like, oh yeah, add to cart. And so I know that when I am putting things in my cart, I have to like stop and pause because I know it's a trigger for me to say, am I buying this because I need it? Is it
Mhm.
something that I'm going to be using, or am I just looking for like some instant gratification to boost my mood because I'm bored, I'm cranky, or whatever?
Yeah.
And so, because that's part of that judgment as well. It's like, oh, I should get this. I deserve it because I worked really hard when I really, really don't need it. And I'm probably going to regret this purchase later on because what am I going to do with it? Like I went on a little cosmetic binge the other day because I did need concealer. I didn't need three different concealers from three different brands to see which I liked better, and I still bought three of them. So, um, and by the way, the CC cream from Tarte is the one that's working the best for me right now. But I didn't need it, and I know that I probably shouldn't have, but in that moment, like I wasn't paying attention to my judgment. I was just like, give it to me. Look at it's on sale. I got a 20% off code.
Yeah.
Treat yourself. So uh, it's an ongoing battle. I feel like as I've gotten older, I feel like I am less judgmental. I still have thoughts, right? I still have thoughts. And I try to be a really transparent person. But one of the things I've really worked on is not everybody needs to know my thoughts. Like my judgments aren't always helpful. And so I'm learning this, especially with my kids. I want the best for them and I want them to make good decisions and I want them to have like fruitful and great lives. But a lot of my advice and a lot of my feedback to them, it feels really, really judgmental to people who, number one, are not living in the same reality that I was at their age. And number two, are perfectly capable of making their own decisions and living their own lives. And so um, some of it still comes out, because they're my kids and I gave birth to them and I reserve the right to be judgmental for their whole existence. But I really like worked on just being happy and supportive for them, whatever direction they go, because that's what they need. They don't need me to tell them you're right or wrong because they're going to do what they want. It really comes down to, I hope this works out for you. What do you need from me? I'm rooting for you. Um, I'm sorry that that happened. Like that's what they need. They don't necessarily need that I told you so, you should have listened to me. And didn't we get this lesson in 2005? Like that stuff's usually not helpful. So even in like the work world, it's, when you come with a certain level of like expertise or experience, it's really easy to judge, other people finding their way. But I'm like, I wasn't a good trainer when I first started. I still have days where I'm not a good trainer now. So, like, who am I to judge somebody else's performance? However, maybe I can be helpful and ask them if they're interested in any support, right? Interested in any tips. Like this happened to me last November. I emceed a linkages, like a little mini linkages conference, and it was for pregnant and parenting teens to come in, and they were doing like a seminar for them, like to really introduce them to like a work conference. And so they were running it like a work conference. So they had like a keynote speaker and they had like little stuff that they were doing. It was really fun. And so one of the presenters, she was like giving an inspirational story about where she had come from and like where she works at now and like her process of being like first generation college graduate from her family and like what that meant for her. It was really great. Like her content was amazing. I loved listening to her story. And there were some things that she did presentation wise that were distracting, some ways that she could improve, things that if you don't know, you don't know. But I reached out to her. She passed out her contact info, and I said, I really loved your story. You were amazing. Um, would you be interested in any feedback? about your presentation style. And she was like, oh my God, yes, I would love some help. And so it was like, here's what you did really well. Here are some tips to maybe improve, like, for example, not having full sentences on your PowerPoint that you're, you know, probably going to try to read out loud because that's what we do. Um, some other tips about like volume and tone and the inflection in your voice, like these types of things. And she was really grateful. At least she said she was. And I wasn't judging her as like, oh my God, this girl's not as good as. No, I just see a lot of potential and I wanted to offer support. But if I said, do you want some feedback? And if she had said, no, I'm good, I would have said, well, great. I'd love to see, your presentations in the future. I'm not going to take that personal. So I just, there's like a fine line, right? With like what judgments do you share and what do you keep to yourself? And I'm also going to put out there, fix your whole face. How about that? Because your face
Well,
is super judgmental sometimes too.
not just your
You may
words.
not
It's
say the
it's
words, but your face tells a story.
it's your whole body language, right? Just, your face, rolling your eyes, pulling back, doing this. I mean, people judge people who cross their arms, right? Right. And we're thinking they're judging us because they're crossing their arms, right? And so,
Yep.
I had a boss tell me one time, like you always want to fight with me. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're sitting there like this, right? And when I agree with people, I'm like, okay, yeah, I hear you. Why? Yeah, where I'm from. I feel you. All right, cool, right?
Yeah.
And I only fit in her chairs because I was almost 400 pounds at the time, and like this, right? So the combination
Yeah.
here, she thinks that I'm wanting to be argumentative and fight with her, and I'm agreeing with her, right? And
Mhm.
so it can affect the way that people respond to you, the way that, you know, they want to approach you. If you seem unapproachable, people won't offer those things, right? And like you said, giving feedback, a lot of people have been bitten by the feedback, offer before in terms of, somebody, you know, not knowing uh, not knowing a way to give feedback that's constructive rather than,
Right.
tearing somebody down, right? And so there's just so many different spaces that we live in that, can really be a challenge. And so, yeah, so there's the graphic I wanted to show. And just taking a look at it, just think about all those. These are just an example of some of the different places that we make judgments, right? But think about, culture, right? Different ideas of eye contact and even tipping, right? You mentioned, people who don't treat their servers well. There's a lot of places in the world where tipping is not something that they do, right? And so you may judge somebody as having poor character for not tipping their server when it's not something that they're accustomed to doing,
Hmm.
and might be wondering why we're giving them more money than their paycheck, right? Just those things like that.
Hmm.
um, Communication styles happens all the time. Introverts get talked over all the time. They're not given a chance to be heard and to be reflective because they're not speaking right off the bat and being loud and being assertive in how they speak. So they're seen as, not being good leaders, or, not being interested or having a say, right? And so those are judgments that extroverts have on introverts, and then introverts say, oh, well, that person's bossy and they don't want to hear my opinion anyway, right? So we're making those judgments based off of the responses or the lack of responses we get from folks. I mean, just looking at all of those, organization level, right? If you get an instant message from your coworker saying, hey, what are you doing? Do you respond in the same way as if your boss sends you an instant message saying, hey, what are you doing? Right? We judge the intent of the other person, right? The coworker says, oh, I'm thinking about where we're going to lunch. If you get it from your boss, oh, I'm just working on that report. Don't worry, you'll have it by 3, right? Just
Hmm.
thinking about how we deal with those. Any of those stand out to you, Tiff, as places that you've experienced judgment, or you, just automatically brings a level of judgment to you?
I think for me, gender for sure. generation and communication style are the three that I think stand out. Gender, because I'm a woman. And sometimes, and by the way, I'm a vibrant, funny, silly, lighthearted woman, which sometimes means I don't get taken seriously. My generation, not so much anymore because now I'm in the older generation, but I was a go-getter from a really young age. And my age came into the equation often. I would always get, well, when you're a bit older,
You'll
that would
understand.
be it. Yeah. And then communication style is the one that gets me because I am, I'm going to use a word, I am accurate yet tactful. um, but that's a fun way of saying I'm direct. I'm very direct and I don't want to beat around the bush. Um, and sometimes that catches people off guard in the way that I communicate. And by the way, again, I'm energetic and I'm silly. And so, because I am lighthearted about a lot of things, sometimes people misunderstand that I don't take it serious or I'm not like thinking long term because to me, not everything has to be the riot act. It doesn't always have to be super serious. So, yeah, I'm told a lot with my communication style that I have a really strong personality. That's the nice way that people usually tell me that I'm a loudmouth. But I also feel like because I am pretty brave and bold, and I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers. Like one of my best hobbies is stirring the pot for positive change. By the way, let's clarify. Like I'm not one to just go with the status quo because it's the status quo. If it's working for us and we're getting good results and people are happy with it, then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, when things have been not working and we're not having good outcomes and people are not happy about it, like I will be the one to bring it up. I will be the one to say what everybody's whispering in the hallway. Um, and stand on business. Uh, and I don't apologize for it. And I think that also helps others judge me as well. As sometimes being difficult because I won't sweep it under the rug. Like, okay, no, we brought it up. Let's talk about it. No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, you don't want to bring it up, then let's bring it up again next meeting. And I'll bring it up the next meeting after. And if you're not ready for it, then how about the next time? Or let me send a few emails to see if we can bring this, and that direct approach is assertive. But because I'm a woman and because I'm direct, a lot of times I get that I'm very aggressive. I'm aggressive if you snap your fingers at the waitress, but I'm not going to be aggressive if I'm just trying to change policy. But political affiliation, not so much. I mean, nowadays, yes, for sure. But I think that's true for everybody. Um, Marital status, I'm heteronormative, so that doesn't really get me into any issues. But I can say if like people who are in same-sex marriages or people who choose not to get married, or if I was a woman without children, that might look different for me. Um, Religion, I could care, that's not something it's important to me. So,
Yeah.
you know what? Okay, so here's a funny thing, not a funny thing, but an interesting thing. So we work for a university. I know Carl, you work for a few, and I know you are a PhD. I just got my bachelor's a couple years ago during the pandemic, but it's really kind of funny that I think maybe because of my race, because I'm a white, middle-aged white woman that works for a university, um, many times people, well, I can say I very rarely, if ever, get asked about my educational background. Very, 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 very rarely. And the few times that people have questioned my education have been because they were interested in going into the same line of work and wanted to know more about like how I got here. And so that's true for me, but I have to say for like women of color and other minorities, it's a different experience. Like I worked with this very, very, very smart, educated, articulate, beautiful Black woman. And we were in the same space doing the same thing, and people were questioning her education. They didn't ever question mine. And I think that's like a big part of that judgment. And it was a bit offensive to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a big one, ethnicity, right? So you're just if you live in specific places or you work in specific places, people want to know your qualifications,
Hmm.
right? So, oh, where'd you go to school? Or, my dad lives in a retirement community down, in Banning, right? So not a whole lot of black folks down there. And so it's something that he has stopped going to like the restaurant that's there in the retirement community because invariably it'll be brought up to him, hey, so what do you do? How'd you make your money? And that person could just be asking just because they were interested in, what your profession is. But
Hmm.
for my dad, who, grew up a young black boy in the 60s, right? Those types of questions are questions that were profiling, right? And so for him, he gets tired of having people ask that question because, and he might be completely right that they're trying to, whoa, oh, you're a black guy. That's odd here. So I wonder how you made your money, right? And for him, that's something that he's a little sensitive on, and I definitely understand that, right? And you get that. I'll say, here's a judgment that's maybe harmless, but it's something that I live with every time I walk into an authentic Mexican restaurant. Well, I wouldn't say every time, just authentic Hispanic restaurant. Could be Peruvian, could be Salvadorian, right? Whatever. 8 times out of 10, people will ask for my order in Spanish because they assume that I'm Latino. And I've learned to say no soy Latino. And they look at me like, or no, not, at first I say, no hablas nada español. And they look at me and then they make a different judgment. What, you're Latino and you don't speak Spanish? That's a big one too, right? I've just Spanish speakers. If you see somebody who is La Raza and they don't speak Spanish, do you have a judgment? Right. And so, and then I tell them, no, sorry, Latino. And then they're like, oh, okay. Then the next judgment is, what are you? Right. So it's something that happens all the time. But, me being black, I get black folks who are like, oh, really? Oh, your dad must be mixed then, or whatever else it is. Right. And I have somebody I know who he knows, he knows who I am. He knows all about me. And then he saw my dad. He said, but your dad, I mean, because my dad is obviously a black man, but he says, your dad don't look all black. Right. And I'm like, well, what does all black mean? Right. And so this is something that, you know, people deal with identifications, identifiers, things that we process. And if we're not careful, these are things that we make judgments about or make assumptions. And assumptions are the same thing as a bias, right? We're
Yeah.
assuming behavior, assuming, you know, um, who people are, what they do, how to approach them. And it's something that, like you said, is a survival instinct. But at the same time, just like Eric talked about, right? Generations, right? It's assumed that he doesn't know as much in terms of management. He doesn't know as much as somebody who's, in their late 30s, early 40s, right? So
Hmm.
he's not management material, someone would say, just because he doesn't have the experience or perspective, right? And I catch myself doing that just because I've been that age, and I experience a lot of what my daughter and my stepson that they're talking about, that they're going through. I in my head I'm saying, yeah, well, and that's going to come with experience because I was right there with you in those situations. But I also make sure that that's not something I say because I don't want them to feel like I'm judging them or being unapproachable every time they ask me a question. Well, yeah, I went through that too, and this is what you should do, or or you're doing it wrong, because different people have different pathways, right? Like
Hmm.
you mentioned, I've also let them know if you want any tips or if you have any questions, right? That's something that I'm always available for, right? And so it's not going to be something that I will just disqualify you because you're young, but I definitely try to have that empathy, you know. But just that question that maybe I've posed it before, but there's a stat that says 72% of Gen Z, so people who are 28 years old and younger, say that they prefer face-to-face communication at work.
Mm.
And just right off the rip, how does that sound? Does that sound right?
It depends on which one you're talking to, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, just thinking about 72%. And most people I say this to in a class, they'll look at me like, what? That's not right. And I'll ask them, how many people think that that sounds weird? And I get a lot of hands raised, if not the entire room, right? And
Hmm.
I say, okay, so what's wrong with that? Well, they're always on their phones, right? They're always looking down. They're always like staring at their screens. I said, okay, well, can you have a face-to-face conversation on your phone? Can you have a face-to-face conversation on a screen like we're doing right now in Zoom, where we're having real-time synchronous conversation where you can see my face, you can see my responses, you can see my shoulders, right? You can see my hands, jazz hands or spirit fingers, right? And
Spirit fingers, yes.
yeah, all of those things. So technically, we are having a face-to-face conversation right now. So we have that conversation and just get people to agree that technically, objectively, what we're doing virtually is a face-to-face conversation. Now,
Mhm.
what is the difference is that when we are in person, that is in person, and I when I think of face-to-face conversation, my first thought, just because I grew up without a screen in my face, is being in person, right? And sharing energy in the same room, right? And so I acknowledge that yeah, that's what my brain goes right to. But there is new information, new developments, new medium that allow us to have face-to-face conversations virtually as well. So can we say rather than face-to-face, we're meeting in person or we're meeting virtually, right? And most people are like, oh, well, I guess I didn't think of it like that. And then I had somebody in a county that wanted to argue with me. No, that's not right. It's no, no, face to face means you're in person. I said, okay, well, can we use those two words and have a distinction? No, I don't want to think of it. It's as if their brain hurt that they had to go beneath the surface, right? And it makes sense because all those things that we were taught as a child are in our subconscious. And like you mentioned, it is what we believe, it's what we stand for. And if something new information comes up that shows that that's not exactly correct anymore, our brain wants to reject it. Our brain wants that homeostasis. I want to know what to expect. I want to know when I'm walking into a situation or interacting with somebody that they are on the same page with me and that I can predict behavior because our brain wants to stay safe, right? And so
Yeah.
just having that conversation about generate, oh, these kids these days. I would, how many generations of people have said kids these days, right? Usually all of
Right.
them. So, yeah, so those are just different examples of things that we come across and how people perceive us. Are there any of those that you see that you, if you're not careful, will make a quick judgment on somebody?
So honestly, right now, the one that's a trigger for me, from this little lens here,
Hmm.
um, without making this our whole podcast, is political affiliation. And
Hmm.
I have some real visceral reactions to those who are supporting. I'm just going to keep it real. I have a real hard time with people who still support our president. I have a
Hmm.
really freaking hard time, like, being curious and being um, not non-judgmental about everything that's happening in our world and what's happening to us in our country and what's happening to immigrants and what's happening to our cities and what's happening just to our health agency. Like, I have a really hard time with people who are still like, yeah, that's my guy. given all of what's happening right now. And I when I first started, like I've never been a fan. Um, when he became president in 2016, I was not happy, but I thought, well, give him a chance, give him a chance because, I could be wrong. I'm willing to rethink my initial reaction to this person and um, was like, well, I guess I was right. I was right. And so this time around, knowing how he was as a president, that people still supported him, I really had a hard time with that. But again, I could still maybe forgive it because you have a right to choose, and I still believe people have a right to choose. But I also have the right to judge you. So um, where I really have a hard time is just reconciling my values for humanity and people who still support this administration and seeing the atrocities that are happening under this administration, and you're still like, yep, that's my guy. um, I can't move past. I'm having a really hard time getting past that. And by the way, a large group of my friends are supporters
Mhm.
and are really comfortable with it. We have chosen not to talk about politics because it's very triggering for me apparently, and we're never going to come to an agreement. But I also don't see them in the way that I saw them previous to the election. I really have had to rethink. It's new information that I've had to rethink those relationships, and are these people that I align with from a values perspective. It has nothing to do with, like, for me, like, has nothing to do with party. It has
Mhm.
everything to do with how can you support a person who's so cruel and chooses people who are inhumane to other human beings, regardless of where they were born or how they got here. The I have a real hard time with that. So um and I try and, like, in a professional sense, keep that to myself, but we're keeping it real here. And if you support this administration and all of the things that are happening, then I really do judge you.
Well,
So
Tiff,
we might have 54 viewers
yeah,
after this,
that's really
and
good.
I'm okay.
You
It's
know,
a price I'm willing to take. I really have a hard time with it. It eats away at me, and I honestly, I see a red hat, and I'm ready to make a scene. That's where my communication style gets me in trouble.
absolutely. And for those of you who are ready to if you haven't already turned us off,
Bye.
just okay, enough said. So, but it's just, but that's where it goes both ways, right? And that's where, just even those conversations, we've had, and you can just people disagree or that it pisses them off. When I hear that, yeah, I'm with you for the most part in terms of just treating people like human beings and being um and thinking about other people, being other focused, right? And recognizing that the humanity in people, and that most of the actions that are being taken right now are completely subjective, completely limbic, and completely to the whims of uninformed people. And that's where my thoughts go, either either you don't understand exactly what's happening with how people are being treated or see the big picture and how people are being treated, or you just don't care. And if it's the third, cool, we don't have to kick it. Right. I've got plenty of friends in my life. I have plenty of people in my life that I can hang with and enjoy my life. Right. And but if it's one of the other two, if you're open for a discussion, right, then if you're willing to hear me, as much as I'm willing to hear you, right, and sometimes I'm less willing than other times, but just having that understanding, right, I think that's where the divide comes in, where if we immediately go to you're wrong, click, that's the problem with our society these days, right? I think it's too easy to log people off or to block them, right? I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a divide in our society. You know, growing up, we are my group of friends, we had to get along to be able to do things together. We all rode our bikes together. I had two friends that were brothers, and one of the brothers, I think 80% of us growing up, I wanted to beat him up for some reason or other, but I didn't, right? Just because he was, mean or petty to his younger brother. He would do horrible things, and just being an older brother and picking on his younger brother. And I always wanted to defend his younger brother. And so, there's always things that kept me from doing those things. But at the same time, you know, why? Because that was my friend group. If I beat him up, I couldn't hang out with his younger brother, right? Or, maybe other people's parents on the block would say, "Oh, stay away from Carl," right? And so, or if we're playing baseball across the street, we're playing basketball, and we need 10 people, and we want to kick somebody or block somebody from our group. Well, now we have nine, and then that's not as different, right? And so just we have to play 3-on-3 instead of 5-on-5, and then one group has to sit out and wait for the next, right? So those things like that, we had to deal with conflict in the moment, right? We had to, and at school, on the bus home, or just in our social lives, it wasn't as easy as disconnecting people, blocking people, and not having to deal with people. I mean, people have great virtual lives. That's awesome. But if you're tired of dealing with someone virtually, you just don't have to respond to their messages, right? And like I said, you can block them or whatever else it is. But that's the virtual society, which has a premium on you know identifying things and saying, this makes me feel good, this makes me not feel good. It's the same thing as with social media, same thing as with the news, or the supported news stations, right? Which are, I mean, if you look at Fox or MSNBC or whatever it's called now, MS Now or something like that, they skew completely to the edges, right? When we were kids, there was four news channels, four, it's not three, four news channels. And so they had to stay within, well, this side is doing this side is doing this. And so you had to hear both sides, right? If you wanted to watch the news or wanted to watch, 60 Minutes or anything else like that, it showed both sides equally. Nowadays, that doesn't have to happen because there's 200 channels, 500 channels, and you don't ever have to deal with that. You can put your favorite channels in your space, and you can only see them. It's like a radio preset, right? You can just preset your favorite channels and never have to hear any other channels, right? So, I don't have any country music in my preset because I have all the other stuff that I like. So guess what? I don't hear any country music, right? Unless somebody else brings it to my attention. So I have no clue. I have no experience about what the country music that I hear is pop, and it sounds all the same. It sounds like hip hop these days, right? So I've kind of, had that, but just thinking about, we live in our own self-contained bubble, and we allow only the things and people that we connect with into our bubble. We can keep the outside noise away from the bubble. But if we do that, how do we ever understand the motives, the thought processes, the intentions of those folks who live outside our bubble? And I have friends that, like you said, they vote differently than me. They connect differently than me. And, that's that's something where, recognizing who they are and that they're good people in general, they just maybe are uninformed, right? So we don't have that conversation unless they bring it up. And then I let them know, do you really want to have this conversation with me? Is this a conversation you want to have? Because I'm not going to sit here and you're not going to convince me otherwise, and I'll tell you why. But we should hear each other, right? And if that's not going to happen, okay, cool, then let's stop. And if it doesn't stop, okay, well, look, and that's maybe something where you make your exit. But I don't want to just, because I mean, right now it's to the point where when I see a truck flying an American flag, my first response is, ugh, right?
Same,
And do you know how much
same.
that sucks? We live in the United States of America. I would not want to live anywhere else. I love where I'm from. I'm so happy to be born where I'm from and to be able to have those things that have been afforded to me because of where I'm from. And to see those iconic, figures of our society being used in a political way to the point where it turns me off. It's a sad thing, right? I root for America in the Olympics. I mean, that's who I root for. I mean, if you know, if it's America against the world, right? And so that's that's where I'm at. And at the same time, there are things that I would like to always have in my mind as, you know, things that I want to connect to as well that have been watered down and bastardized, right? And so that's a challenge. I mean, I have a pair of shorts that I bought a long time ago that from Old Navy. Old Navy is all about Fourth of July shirts and things like that.
Yep.
And I had a USA shorts and a Fourth of July tank top, and I wear the USA shorts around the house. You know,
Hmm.
and but it's just something I know if I would feel odd about putting a shirt on or a tie on that had iconic symbolic figures of the country because I wouldn't want people to associate me with something that I fundamentally disagree with. And that's the hardest part of this separation is that we've taken those things that should be important to all of us and made them two sides. And it's ridiculous.
Hmm.
And it's lack of empathy, lack of digging deeper into understanding things. It's all these people are taking surface level conversations. And really, like you said, if they are supporting somebody who is doing things that does not support humanity, and they're just still supporting this person, making excuses for them, guess what? You know what we do that with? We do that with our sports teams. It's become sports, right? That's the issue. We treat our parties like we do our favorite teams. And if you're on the other side, then I mean, if I'm a Giants fan, I don't like Dodger fans. If I'm a Niner fan, don't like Cowboy fans. If I'm a Cubs fan, I don't like Cardinals fans, right? And so you have this immediate negative response, and that's the same thing with politics. The problem is at the end of a Giants Dodger game, if you're not wearing a Dodger hat, I can't identify who you are or what you support, so we can hang out, right? When we pick sides in politics, they ask us to make decisions about our daily lives that affect other people. And I'm sorry, I'm always going to think about how is this person going to be affected? And my position is if you are in that space where you're like, I don't care about how they're affected, I worry about how I'm affected, then we have a fundamental difference in how we see the world.
Yeah.
And so I am, you know, and there's not always, like I said, relationship focused folks. Sometimes we focus so much on other folks. Sometimes we have to intentionally focus on ourselves. But I'll take that over being me focused and not thinking about how other people are able to live their daily lives. That's something that I can't ascribe to.
Well, I think I don't want to go too much into the political one just because I'm very triggered.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way. Like this is not a thing. It's just honestly, I'm always willing to rethink. Which, by the way, that's a really good resource for this topic. Rethink by Adam Grant is a really good book about like being able to step back and not just believe what you believe, but really to be able to take in and rethink, and there's some science behind like the value of rethinking. And so for me, again, I'm judgmental. I'm not going to ever sit here and pretend like I'm not. I'm a human being, and I do have judgments. And I'm always like willing to reconsider, right? So this is like I was not as pushed to the edge as I am now as I was maybe 8 years ago. Like 8 years ago, I was willing to listen. 8 years ago, I was willing to be like, well, let me hear your
Yeah.
perspective. Give me some facts. Give me some statistics. I'm not there anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like I'm not there
because
anymore.
it's
There's just too
existential
there's
now.
too much.
Yeah.
Right. There's just
It's
too much
existential
at
now.
stake.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I'm if someone says I'm a Republican and I don't support this administration, I got you because I'm also for limited government, although that's not what that party is anymore. Um, I'm also for lowering taxes and making things affordable. That's just not the reality. Like what your party doesn't stand for what it is on paper. You're not voting in the way that you describe yourselves, right? Um, but I can stand by that. I can stand by that. Where I really are the people who got the hats, the flags, the t-shirts, the tattoos, the that's my dude. That is where I have a real hard time. It's existential. I can't even say it.
It's
It's
existential.
so deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Existential. There you go. Um, I I can't get beyond that because for me, you've taken someone, even if personally hasn't done it, this movement has hurt so many people, so many people. And you're like, I'm okay with the suffering as long as it benefits me. That's where I'm really like, I can't rethink. I can't move past my judgment because to me that's a character assessment,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm all for safety in the United States. I think we should be a safe country of law and order. You can't keep people safe by harming people. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like you you can't bomb other countries for safety. Like that's like trying to bone your way to being a virgin. Can I I don't know. It just doesn't, they don't go together, you know? It doesn't go together. And so that like the people who are like digging heels in to say, yeah, 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 like people are suffering, but this is what we got to do. There's such a cognitive dissonance with like actions versus outcomes that I, I I will be willing to be wrong. Okay. Like I'm obviously taking a stand here and I'm willing to be wrong. If there's new evidence or something else that comes, I would be willing to rethink my stance. But right now, I'm not there because there's nothing there that shows me that I'm wrong. But I rethink it, trust and believe. When I get on my high horse, apparently I have my high horse is very high. When I'm on my high horse, I'm still looking for ways to come down a few notches. I'm willing to assess my own judgment, um, but I reserve my right to be judgmental when it comes to human suffering. Just the
Sure.
same way, like I know, like there's a lot of complexity to so many topics in the world, but like for example, world hunger. I understand like you can't just feed people. That's not going to fix the issue. It's such a complex challenge. I'm willing to acknowledge the complexity of it, but making more people hungry, making more people hungry isn't going to solve world hunger. You know, taking away people's health care isn't going to make the country healthier. Making you hate your neighbor isn't going to make this country better. It's going to make it worse. So these are things where again, like the catchphrases and the sound clips and the sound bites that people are like, yeah, America, to me don't align with what's really happening, and it's having a real direct impact on people's well-being. And I see the suffering. I hear about the suffering. I it hasn't hit me yet personally, but it doesn't have to hit me for me to be empathetic and to cry. Like I can't tell you how many days that I've sat in another country, watching like ice raids and watching people getting taken from their jobs and separated from their families in the most inhumane way possible. And it's going to get me right now, where it's so overwhelming for me to see. And these are not people who I know. I don't know these people personally, but to watch that happen and know that it can happen to anybody and it's happening to people is like, where have we gone where we're like, that's okay. That's okay. That's where I'm at. And it's so heartbreaking for me. And this is why I'm so like stuck in that judgment because it's like, how can you see this happening and be like, it's okay. This is normal. It's not freaking normal. It's inhumane and it's disgusting. I didn't know we were going here today, Carl. and, and you know what's bad? I'm gonna cry for the rest of the day. Like this weighs so heavy on my heart. I'm literally gonna be in tears for the rest of the day because and I'm not wrong about that. I'm not wrong about how bad it is to treat people like that, to take people to countries they've never been to where like how do you reconcile that and be a human being, you know? I don't understand it. I can't understand it. I've tried, trust and believe. I've tried to look into all the science behind how do people justify that, make it okay and celebrate it? I can't find it. Something is
Because,
fundamentally wrong and I'm gonna stand, I'll die on that mountain.
yeah. Well, it's just those, like I mentioned, the majority of folks, they don't either have the time or the inclination to do the homework or actually to take a moment to dig beneath the surface and look at the feelings of other people in those situations. I hear people all the time, oh, these people that don't speak, English, if I was in their country, I'd learn their language. And
Not true.
so yeah, that's what I tell them. I said, well, when are you planning to live in another country? No, why would I live in another country? Okay, so you have to think of it from your perspective. If you had to live in another country, and if you're on vacation, you ask people if they speak English, don't you? Right? And I've been on vacation where I've connected with other people because they speak English. Oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Missouri. Oh, wow, I'm from California. Oh, we're Americans. And even if we're here, we're here because we are strangers in a strange land. And so we're looking for that connection with on the surface level. No one's digging deeper, right? And that's the problem. So you hear those people, well, I'm doing this because of that. I'm doing this because of what I heard and I read this, and a lot of those stats are wrong. And you talked about being safe. Crime is actually down, right? It's been going down the last 10 years in most cities and areas in the country. But the biggest issue, Tiff, is that for me, is that we are devaluing expertise. We are devaluing scholarship in our country. Not everyone has to go to college, but when you recognize the reason people go to school is to become educated in that specific topic that they are doing the research in and that they can share information on, and we reject that because that's not how I feel about it.
Right.
That's when a society starts to crumble. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing people who would trust their own perspectives over a teacher who has been to college to learn critical thinking skills, right? And how to inform people on an objective way. We're so in our feelings. And you it's true. We are in our feelings. This country is in our feelings. How do we get back to I know what I'm feeling, but what else is there? What am I missing? And if that's the power of reading. That's the power of seeing things objectively, of identifying, research and things that are objective and dispassionate, or even going to community college or college. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and he was so excited that his son was going to is being homeschooled, and he's like, yeah, because he's way past the level of everyone else, and so if he gets all that stuff, he's going to be able to graduate when he's 12, 13 years old. And I was like, okay, so he's 12, 13 years old, and you're going to put him out in the work world when his critical thinking skills are just coming into fruition. He is not even at 25, right, where your brain is fully cooked, right? And you are having him homeschool where he does not have to interact socially with other kids his age, right? And so, what is that that you are looking for. You're looking for academics. Hey, a computer can do that for you, right? But what about dealing with the fact that he's hurt or he's frustrated or he doesn't agree with somebody? How do you learn how to manage those things? You learn in the playground, you learn in recess, you learn when somebody's picking on you or bullying you, and you learn how to, recognize when that happens as a kid and how you respond to it as an adult. When do you learn failure? When I strike out with the bases loaded, that's when I give up a game-winning hit. Those are the things that you learn. Life isn't always going to go your way. And if we are sheltering our folks from disagreement, misunderstandings and failure, then, what are we preparing them for? Because the world is all about disagreements and failure, right? There's just as much of that as there is successes, and if not more. And so what are we preparing our kids for? What have we created our society to be? Win, win, win. That means I shut out anything that might give me the opportunity to lose. And that's why that's why we're in the place we are right now, where, I don't care about other people. I just care about me. And they respond to, we're gonna win so bigly and we're gonna keep winning and winning and winning. That's the message they're getting. And how do we win? We make other people lose. And people are feeling that and they're not doing the homework to actually recognize what's behind that and how does it affect our our humanity, not just your humanity, but our humanity as a society. You know, I went and saw Trevor Noah, and me and my wife we went with our friend Dope and her dope husband, and one of the things he talked about was just this pullback from the world, right? That we're doing right now, and like I said, I'm not trying to be political, but the one thing that he said, regardless of whether it's morally right or wrong, is that it's taking away people's perception of who we are as a country and the power that we had, where when we were reaching out to other people and being altruistic and being charitable and helping other societies, um, right there, and with fundamental things like AIDS and hunger and poverty, right? Those things like that. And other people are going to fill those voids. And so when people look to America as, wow, you know, I want to be an American. I want to move to America. I want to act like Americans. Americans are providing this influence around the world for altruistic measures. What we're losing is that power that we had, that influence that we had, that now other people like China or Russia can step in and say, yeah, America's not what you thought it was. Look to us as that model. And at the end of the day, what that does is make us less safe, right? And so if you look at it at a global perspective, it's like America is blocking all of its friends. Just like somebody who's blocking all their friends. I don't have to deal with them anymore. Well, what happens? Life goes on without you, right? We become this insular society where people are not thoughtful to each other unless you ascribe to things. And just think about, I mean, if you're the same religion, if you're, wars have been fought based Catholics and Protestants, or, you know, the wars have been created because you're Jewish or because you're Muslim, right? Or because you're a specific religion, or, even if you don't have a religion, I mean, there's been wars based off of people having different hair texture because our brain, if we're not careful, will always keep us safe, and which means it will keep us from learning and wanting to be curious about that other person and how we can connect with them. And that's what we're seeing right now. And it's heartbreaking. And I feel the same way you do. I'm not as outwardly passionate about it, but it's super sad. It makes me sad to think that we are in a society that does not care about other people. And it's not just other people in the world or people from another country, are poor, like you mentioned, with food, what they're doing with food stamps right now, what they're doing with Medicare right now, the folks that maybe are having it hard, or or just have it hard for different reasons. We're making judgments that they have it hard because they don't work hard enough, when we know that a vast majority of people collecting food stamps in the country are working already. They just can't afford, the fact that they're not making a living wage, right? Well, then they need to find another job. Okay, well, you just are taking away all these opportunities in college. So where are they going to get this other job? Right? You want to judge people on that. And I mean, I was just having this conversation with my dad yesterday, after the school shooting the other day, which was, you know, terrible.
Don't even
He,
get me started.
yeah, his thing is we need to have cops all around the school. And I said, well, Pop, I said, we have cops in the schools right now, school resource officers that are afraid of gunmen and that, do not respond in that way. Well, we need to have actual sworn officers that, they're trained in the academy. I said, well, but there also a lot of them are being trained in the fact that everybody is suspicious and treat people that you don't know as suspects. And so, and I explained to him the school to prison pipeline. He says he knows about it. We know, black and brown kids are three times as likely to have an interaction with a police officer in their schools than white kids, right? And so, do you think that's going to be, if we had cops all around everywhere, do you think that's something that's going to be equalized, or is it just going to be exacerbated? And then you're going to have people that are coming in, to pick up their kids if they're sick or they have a family function or whatever else it is, and there's going to be checkpoints in those schools. And what about, my cousin who's getting off of work and maybe, has grease on his overalls, and maybe his braids aren't necessarily as tight as they want to be, and who's frustrated because he needs to pick up his kid because he's got to take him to a doctor's appointment, and the cop wants to check all his bona fides because he's profiling him. What's going to happen there? And
Mhm. It's happening
so
now. It's happening
that,
already. It's
yes, but that's what I'm trying to say. People think, well, this is the way to fix it. When we see an issue, we want to assign blame, and if we assign
yep.
blame, that's then we can come up with an answer. When there's If we look at an issue and say, what are the underlying factors? How do we address it? You know, that's something we've been trying to do, and we've been making inroads over the last 50, 60 years, but what's happening is it's all being taken away. And it's sad and it's scary. I worry about not just our black and brown kids, but our white kids who are, and American kids who are being and moving towards being inundated and inculcated with, indoctrinated with this idea of what it means to be American that is completely different than what we were taught what it was to be American. And that's all based off of judgment. And unfortunately, the judgment, like you mentioned, is
Yep.
natural. It's part of our brain. If we are not invested in wanting to know more, the judgment will take over, and you see great societies that have been crumbled over time, right? My dad always talks about 250 years is how long the Roman Empire, lasted, right? And so next next year will be 250th anniversary.
We're there.
So,
We're there.
I just, please, folks, if you have a feeling about something, if you have a feeling that something's right or wrong, feel it and then recognize, I'm feeling it. What do I know about it? Need to know about it before I act on that feeling. I'm just going to leave it there. So we're at our time. But any
Well,
any
I've ruined the
tips?
rest of my day. Um, don't be an asshole. This is, I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. You know, my only last thought is this: buy Adam Grant's book, Rethink, and read it. Don't just buy it, but read it, listen to it, whatever you need to do. It's really, really great in helping rethink. Like you say, feel it, but then what evidence? What can I look at it in a different perspective? And I'm huge on that. Be willing to be wrong. If you got it wrong, you will. Nobody's ever going to get it right 100% of the time. And look for evidence, not just the one that agrees with what you already believe to be true, but what is the other side? What are you missing? Um, and by all means, just freaking care about other people. I don't I have my judgments about socks and banana bread or carrot cake and eyeliner and yards. Like I absolutely have a preference there. I'm not using it to hate other people or to, if you put pineapple in your carrot cake, you deserve to be in a prison. Like I might feel that in my heart, but I'm not taking any steps to get you there. Um, but just let's not normalize being nasty to each other, like that. Everybody deserves compassion, and okay, let me rephrase this. People deserve like the benefit of the doubt, and then they need to be held accountable for where they choose to hold their position. Like I don't know how to say that. I mean, maybe I need more time to think about it, but if the way that you think and the way that you judge causes harm, and you don't try to make amends for that and make it right, then you deserve whatever comes to you. But if you have made a misjudgment and you are willing to accept it, make amends, and move forward in a different direction, then you, I think, deserve forgiveness. I think we all do. But for those people who are hurting others and they know that they're hurting others and they take pleasure in it, I hope that I don't wish you well. How about that? I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't wish you well, but we definitely, I will never take pleasure in somebody else's pain and suffering, even for those again that I'm having a hard time reconciling. When judgment comes, I'm not going to take pleasure in their suffering. I just hope that justice is served, and in whatever that means. I just hope that there's a reconciliation at some point, and maybe we can. Well, we only have what, a year left of democracy left. We should be fine. I guess whatever the new social system is should be okay. We'll be all right.
And
That's all.
one thing that I found that I didn't normally look for, but there's a place called Dinah's Fried Chicken in Glendale, so down south.
Hmm.
It's right off I-5, and they make coleslaw with pineapple in it.
Not a
It
fan.
is, see, you made an immediate snap judgment. Have you had
No, I've
coleslaw
tried
with
it.
pineapple? Yeah,
I've tried it. Not
yeah,
a fan. I love pineapple in so many things. I
yeah.
pizza with pineapple. I like pizza with pineapple, and I like
So,
pineapple in a lot of things. It just doesn't belong in carrot cake.
let me tell you, just if you haven't had a good coleslaw with pineapple in it, if you ever get by Dinah's, ask for a taste. That's all I ask.
Taste it. You may love it.
There it is.
You may
That's
love it.
right. That's right.
Not a fan.
And until that happens, I'm Carl,
And I'm Tiff.
and we just kept it real.
We did.
So
And I'm gonna
be
be
well,
real sad
everyone.
the whole rest of the day today. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Yep.